Jonathan, you head up ESG investing at Neuberger. People want this. Are you agnostic to what may be happening, and you're just going to get people want it? We might as well, Neuberger Berman might as well give them what they want. If you're part of paving a path to hell with good intentions, do you care?
Look, of course, we're sympathetic to the companies that might have challenges in the ability to access, petrol and natural gas, right? There are those disruptions. Those are obviously a problem. But let's also be realistic about what's going on. We've seen a 5% increase in power demand above pre-COVID levels because of economic growth, right? That's a good thing. And we haven't been able to get the transition back to the economic growth aligned with some of the supply pieces, right? So, part of the problem that Francisco talks about with the gas supply in Europe is entirely down to Russia deciding to use leverage here around Nord Stream 2 to make it harder for the West to be able to access gas supplies. So there are things that are nothing to do with ESG. In fact, there are an example of poor governance by some of the sovereigns that we think is a challenge. And look, we also realize that this is part of the transition that we're seeing. If we had better battery storage solutions, if we had stronger ultra high voltage lines in place to help us to be able to deal with the storage problem of the climate transition, and we will have that in the decade to come, these issues would not be manifesting themselves in the consumer's experience, whether they're trying to get in their car or go into a shop.
What are you talking about in terms of, Jonathan, of a realistic sort of drawdown of dependency on hydrocarbons? Do you think it's 2030, 2040, 2050? It's going to be tough to have FedEx flying planes with, I don't know. The world's economy runs on these things, and we're used to it, and we take it for granted. When do you really see us being able to transition away from it completely?
Look, I mean, the 2050 goals, you've got the UPSs and so on of this world who've committed to net zero by 2050. And they know, and we know, that the technology isn't fully there today to be able to decarbonize the air transportation. But that's going to be, it's about 3% of global emissions. There's a huge amount that can be done right now around power generation, that can be done around ground transportation, and we're seeing that transition happen. Look at what Ford's, we heard great numbers yesterday, have announced around their commitments to capital expenditure in their shift towards electric vehicles, and that's why by the 2030 type horizon, we do expect most of the big auto manufacturers to be predominantly, if not entirely, focused on their electric vehicle production. So this is going to happen faster than you might think, but we
got to power the grid. You got to power the grid, Jonathan.
I think that's right. In emerging markets, like China, that transition from a production perspective is going to be slower. But the key thing is to stop building new coal-fired generating capacity today, and instead to focus on the low-cost options that we have in renewables that have really proven their merits.
What we do doesn't matter compared to what China's going to do. Francisco, how would you power the grid? What is our best chance for powering the grid with something other than hydrocarbons?
Well, I mean, I think renewables are in most cases going to be the answer. The challenge, as Jonathan said, is that we don't really have enough battery storage technology to make the transition happen. Remember, renewables are intermittent, so part of the challenge, I mean, Jonathan mentioned something I frankly disagree with. I don't think that the European energy crisis is related to Russia all that much. I think we've seen a domestic supply decline in Europe of around 10% because of a lack of investment in hydrocarbons, because companies are being pressed to disinvest. We've seen a 17% drop in liquid natural gas imports because China's economy, as you pointed out, Joe, is booming, and because we are demanding tons of things from China. And so at the end of the day, if we print a lot of money, if we give it to the people, if people go and buy TVs and cars and things, we got to make those things, and that takes a lot of power. So it's very difficult to make the energy transition if we all want to go from a 40-inch screen TV to a 60-inch screen TV and all that fun stuff, right? So I think at the end of the day, the energy transition requires conservation. And I think, when your question on the power front, I mean, I think you really need to develop technology that you don't have today. There's things you can do. You can go from coal to gas. We've seen that. And then eventually you can go from coal to others.
I know.
Gas and hydrocarbon for sure, but it's a much lower, right? It's a much lower emitting hydrocarbon, right? So you cut emissions by about 2/3 on gas. So at least you have that.